last night's deadly officer-involved shooting. Let's listen in.
Brian, from the cleaner up to the commanding officer, everyone in that precinct knew Brian, knew him well. He was the one that you called. He was the one that you reached out to if you had a problem in that command. And it wasn't just the cops that knew Brian well, it was the community. The store owners, the building owners, the superintendents, everyone knew Brian. Everyone knew Brian was the cop that you reached out to if there was a problem that needed to be handled. And just the events of last night and what Brian did, it just shows the sort of man he was. He didn't have to be there. He was assigned to a delegates meeting in the morning, being the union delegate for the 102 precinct detectives. He didn't have to go to work, but he made a decision that he had a job to do, and he wanted to get into work and do it. Brian was in the station house processing a robbery arrest that night when another great cop, his supervisor, Sergeant Matt Gorman, came up and had information about a group that was involved in another robbery that was supposed to be out in an area of the 102 precinct. So Brian and Matt did what cops do. They jumped in the car to do a surveillance in that area. While they were out there, the call came over of a robbery in progress over at the cell phone store at 120 Atlantic. And again, doing what great cops do each and every day, they ran to that danger. They didn't have to go there, but they're cops, and they ran over there to assist the other officers that were responding. Upon arrival at the scene, the officers went to the store with other officers, and the perpetrator, Christopher Ransom, charged at the officers with a gun raised, simulating firing at those officers. Chief Maloney will go into greater detail about exactly what happened during that incident. We will be releasing Mr. Ransom's photo to the media at the end of this photo conference, at the end of this news conference, and we're going to be looking for the public's help in getting more information about him, about what he may or may not be involved in. So we're looking for a lot of help from the public and from the media to get his picture out and to get as much information we can about Mr. Ransom. I was at the hospital earlier today. I visited with Sergeant Gorman, and he's still being treated for the leg wound, but I can tell you, he's not the least bit concerned about his own injury. He's overcome by the emotion of losing his friend and his partner, Brian Simonsen, as are all the officers in the 102 precinct that I visited today. I ask that every New Yorker keep Brian's family and the members of the 102nd precinct and every New York City cop in their prayers. As a department, we will never forget Brian and his sacrifice. His legacy is one of unflinching service and now the ultimate sacrifice. And he lives on in the tremendous work of all our New York finest. Thank you. Kevin, you want to give your update?
Good afternoon, everybody. I just want to start by reminding you we're about 20 hours into this incident, so this is an ongoing active investigation, but let me just bring you up to speed where we are at this point in the investigation. Yesterday, approximately 6:09 p.m. hours, the 911 call received a call from a witness who saw our perpetrator put a mask on and enter the T-Mobile store at 120 Atlantic. That witness provides information that the perpetrator has a mask and is also armed with a firearm. The perpetrator takes the two employees that are in that store to the rear office inside that location where he begins to commit his robbery. In response to the 911 call, Sergeant Gorman and Police Officer Detective Simonsen are around the corner conducting a surveillance on an unrelated incident when they respond to the location along with 6 uniformed members of the service. The 2 detectives and the uniformed personnel arrive approximately the same time at 18:12 hours. When they arrive at the scene, Sergeant Gorman and 2 uniformed officers enter the location. As they enter, the perpetrator comes from the back of the location, that office, and he presents himself with the firearm pointed in the direction of the officers. At that time, the officers exit the location as the perpetrator continues running in their direction. When the perpetrator gets to the front of that store, shots are fired. We have a total of 7 members of the service who discharged a total of 42 rounds during this incident. As a result of the incident, the 2 police officers are shot. They're removed to Jamaica Hospital. The perpetrator is also shot and he's removed to Booth Memorial, where he is currently under arrest and being processed for this incident. The officers that responded to the scene were equipped with body-worn cameras. We have 5 officers whose body-worn cameras captured part of this incident. Those body-worn cameras, along with additional surveillance that have been recovered from inside the store, are currently under review and part of our investigation. At this point, we can open it up to any questions you may have. It looks like the squad rolls up first, but moments later, there's uniformed personnel that are also responding. They arrive almost simultaneously. All the shooting happens outside the store, both to the left and to the right of the entrance. No, we believe at this point that Sergeant Gorman goes in with the 2 uniforms. Detective Simonsen is outside the location. The officers back out of the location as the perpetrator is advancing towards them, and the shots are fired outside of the location.
Absolutely not. They were looking for something completely different. Another job came over, and they did what cops do. They responded to that job as backup to the uniformed officers. Oh, where was hit? You got that?
Yep. So the Detective Simonsen was hit 1 time in the chest. Detective Simonsen did not have a vest on. The other personnel there, the uniformed personnel, did have their vests on. Yes, sir. The department procedure is that they wear vests, yes. They were not in uniform. They were in plainclothes. They're both assigned to the 102 squad. Detective Gorman is, Sergeant Gorman is Detective Simonsen's boss at the squad. The perpetrator's firearm was an imitation pistol, yes. They were not. They were not. Yes, and both officers discharged their weapons.
Again, it's all part of the ongoing investigation. You have officers outside the store, some to the right of the store, some to the left of the store, firing towards the store. Yeah, we're looking at all that video. Obviously, it's in 20 hours into the investigation. We're gathering all the social media, videos. He has prior arrests, I believe convictions, only misdemeanor convictions in the past, one of which was an impersonation of a police officer running into the 7-7 precinct, I believe it was. So, again, this is what we want to do. This is the public's help that we're looking for to see how much more we can find out about him. Let me go all the way over here. They're coming, if he's coming out of the store, and they're down the block each way to the right and left.
At this point, we don't have any statements made by him at that point, and the charges are pending with the Queens District Attorney's Office at this point. So just your first question, 18-12 hours, 6:12 p.m., the first unit arrives. 18:13, so just under a minute later, the first shots are fired. So the discharge happens almost 30 seconds, 40 seconds after their arrival at the scene. The discharge lasts about 11 seconds, the first shot to the last shot. And as far as positioning, that's still all part of the investigation. We do have body-worn cameras. We do have the surveillance TV. We have not conducted interviews yet, so that'll be all part of our process during the investigation, identifying who was where and who fired from where.
And just jumping on that, just understand, this happens in seconds. It goes from 0 to 60. You're investigating a possible crime, and all of a sudden someone's charging at you, pointing what you believe to be a firearm, simulating firing at you. It raises everything very quickly. Good back.
If you could describe that action by Mr. Ransom, as you're saying, as he's charging sort of towards the officers with weapons, what was he doing provoking the officers with this physical action?
Yep. There's one entrance to the location that's at the front of the store on Atlantic Avenue. The officers come in that location. Like I said earlier, the perpetrator comes from the rear office. He walks towards that, advances towards that front door. As the officers go out, the perpetrator makes his way right up to that front door. He holds up his hand with the firearm in his hand, and he simulates that he's firing at the officers. Then he retreats back into that store as the shots are being fired. He's taken into custody inside the T-Mobile store.
Just to recap, Detective Simonsen, Sergeant, or Montos who actually fired, total, I think it's
42 shots total.
both of the squad members did discharge, and say how many.
The squad sergeants, we believe Detective Simonsen fired 2 shots, and the sergeant fired 11 shots. The other 5 discharging officers make up the balance of the 42, yes.
So 2 or 3 more, please.
He is married, no children, and he has a mother that's still alive. Good.
Can you talk about in the training that you train officers in a situation like this? What are the officers told? And I understand this is still fresh, but what are they told when you have a situation like this? Can the training really help them when the situation gets out of control like this?
Every 6 months when you go to the range, you get trained. We talk about the tactics. We talk about incidences that have occurred over the course of the last 6 months. You want to avoid that crossfire situation, but understand, it's great to train, but everything happens in a second. You're reacting within seconds, and you're in fear for your life. Your adrenaline is high. We try our best to train, and we'll continue to train. It's our job to try and keep our officers safe. It's horrible. This is the worst feeling you can have. It's the worst thing that we ever go through as a police department. Tina, good. We don't know at this point who shot who at this point. We know there's a lot of shots. It was a chaotic scene. And just bring it back. This scene is caused by a man charging at police officers. We say advance, and he was moving quickly at police officers, pointing a gun at them. The blame goes to that individual for doing that. It shows you the sort of man he is. Like I said earlier on, this is a guy who loved that community. He loved the cops in that community. He loved the people in that community. This was his life. He loved the 102 precinct. We have this all throughout the city. There are cops like him, start as a patrol cop within the precinct, perform tremendously, and move up to the detective squad where they start doing investigations, get their gold shield. It says a lot for the sort of man that he was. Listen, again, they're all going through a lot of emotional distress. One of their best friends died in an incident there. So most of them are out sick at this point that were involved. We are supplying them with the comfort they need, and all New Yorkers, media, everyone's got to give them the support that they need. Dangerous situations that we ask our men and women to go into every day. They're human, and the emotions that they're feeling right now, losing a great friend, it's hurting. They're hurting. There's a lot of hurt going on in the 102. We didn't have any documented mental illnesses for us, but obviously from what we're receiving right now, it's something we're going to look at, and that's what we're asking for the help to find out a little more about this individual. Okay, thank you very much.